Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Moo, an online print and design company that helps you stand out from the crowd. Moo creates premium quality, customizable business cards and promotional materials. Visit moo.com/twist for more details and to get 20% off your next order. And by PagerDuty, serving as the hub of your operations, aggregating all of your infrastructure, monitoring tools, and alerting the right people and teams at the right time. Sign up today at pagerduty.com/twist and get a free t-shirt when you get your first alert. And by AWS Activate, the Amazon Web Services Startup Program. It's easy to start and scale your business with AWS. Visit aws.amazon.com/activate.
Hey everybody, I'm Jason Calacanis.
I'm Brian Alvey.
And today on the 500th episode of This Week in Startups, based on viewer demand, the fan demand, we have a special treat for you, our loyal listeners. Tell them what they're going to hear, Brian.
They're going to hear me interviewing you for a long time. I have a lot of questions. We get through a lot of really good stuff. It's an amazing episode. Very exciting. I learned things that I knew a lot about you, more than most people, and there was definitely stuff in there that I'd never heard before.
So stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups, episode 500. I'm not Jason Calacanis. I'm Brian Alvey. I'm the first ever guest host on the show. Jason is my guest. I'll be interviewing him today. I've known Jason and the Calacanis family since 1983, so more than 30 years.
Wow.
I've worked for Jason 5 times.
Really?
I've quit on Jason 5 times.
No.
Once in less than 2 months. I partnered up with you,
Yep.
which was, I would say, not much easier, but it worked out, right? I can't complain.
Yep.
And then I'm working with you again. My startup is in your incubator, which leads up to the launch conference,
Sure.
The launch festival in March 2015. It is the largest startup conference on Earth, by far. And
by magnitude.
I'll be launching my company there, so I'm super
Exciting.
excited. So I've watched a lot of shows recently to kind of see what stuff you've talked about. I thought I had all these great things I was going to dig out of your past, and you've done nearly a month's worth of content. If you watch it solid, you've done 1 month's worth of shows. Yeah, it's like 22, 23 days, something like that. But that's if there's only 1 hour shows. So you've done almost a solid month. You could do a cable channel of just this show. So you've told a lot of those stories. So I want to go for some of the things maybe people don't ask or don't know, or the things that I don't know. And then along the way,
I can't imagine there's things that you don't know, Brian.
No. There are, and I want to get your answer on this one. I want to find out if you've ever had an original business idea.
Wow.
So this is no holds barred.
Yeah.
Episode 500 of This Week in Startups with my special guest, Jason Calacanis.
Sure. So let's see.
Well, I don't want to ask that yet.
Oh.
I want to save that.
That's a good one. Okay.
I got another one for you.
Okay. Oh, we're going to give a little preview of the questions coming up.
Yeah, that was a preview of the question. Along the way, we're going to find that out.
Okay, along the way, we'll find that out.
Talk about legacy, talk about a lot of things.
Yeah.
I got a lot of good questions. I may not remember to mention the fans' names during the questions, but Eugene, Jess, Noah, there's some great people. This guy, Soam, a lot of official, really good fans out there, really good questions. I like them, so I've worked them in here.
Great.
But I want to start off with this. I want to start back in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Many people may not know. You lived in Brooklyn at one point.
Yes,
right?
I did.
It was a big
when
secret.
It was not cool. We lived in Brooklyn.
Correct.
When you were embarrassed to say you were from Brooklyn.
Right. But now it's like a badge.
Now I meet people. I was at Art Basel, and the guys. I was like, "Oh, where do you live?" He's like, "I live in Brooklyn." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Where?" "Oh, Williamsburg. I live in Park Slope." And I was like, "Oh, okay. How long you lived there?" He's like, "Been there like 8 years." It's like people are like they're from Brooklyn. Like they've been there for 8 years, and they're Brooklynites.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Pretty funny.
So back then, I want to start back there, and then make our way to LA, and then now in San Francisco, both of us.
Yeah.
So back then though, when we would work on side projects. Your day job was at Sony in IT. Mm-hmm. My day job was at Businessweek in IT, and that makes you my go-to guy on all things Sony and security and technology. So did you ever think when you started This Week in Startups that this brand would actually outlive the Sony Corporation?
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty funny. Thinking back to that time, I remember meeting you on the platforms, on the trains.
Trains, right,
and, back in the day, what people don't realize is if you wanted to be in technology in the 80s or 90s, there was no web, first of all. There was no internet. There were online services, CompuServe, whatever. So if you just had an affinity for computers, you basically had one option. You worked in IT. What information technology was
you fixed printers.
That was literally my first job, was fixing HP laser printers. And what was great about that job was you could make money. And you just loved screwing around with computers, like getting them to boot up.
You had a budget. You got boxes of stuff would come to your office, and you got to open them.
You got to open them, and it was like Christmas every day. But it's, it really is like being in the early days of television or something like that. IT was like being in the early days of television where it was just like, oh my God, the signal's up and running. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, we were able to play a video or record something, right? It wasn't like a lot of things were being accomplished, but computers were being put online. Like literally, when we started in the 80s, people did not have computers on their desks at work.
Right.
And we were this first group of kids, as teenagers, who would install the first computer that a person had ever used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in school systems.
And in school systems as well, yeah. You remember the day the computer lab was installed, or when they took the old chemistry lab and converted it into the computer lab, or the English lab and converted it to the computer lab. Or actually, the big one was at McKinley Junior High School, we had a typewriter lab. You took typing lessons, and I
remember that.
I was an amazing typist. I was like the best typist in the class in 7th and 8th grade. And I really focused on that, like being able to type without, I thought it was a very fascinating thing to be able to type without looking. And I really worked on that. And I loved typing, just that mechanical thing. So when computers came out, they replaced the typewriter room. So I guess it's aging myself. But I think that's really interesting in terms of, as entrepreneurs, the people who know the time before people had computers on their desk to everybody having computers on their desk, and actually getting to witness people using a computer for the first time was so funny looking back on it. When you'd say, I remember distinctly saying, okay, hit any key. And the person would look, and I'd say, just hit any key. And they'd say, I can't find the any key.
Right.
And I'd say, no, it means press the key of your choice. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, why didn't it say that? And I was like, it's a good point. It's a user interface, circa 1985.
That's a good point. When they bring in old Apples to be repaired, there was the monitor part and there was the base computer part. And the teachers in Texas would refer to them as the typewriter and the TV.
Yeah.
Like the TV's broken, but the typewriter's still good.
Yeah.
The typewriter's broken, but the TV's not. So anyway, that didn't answer the Sony question. Like what would you do about this movie, this whole thing?
Oh, the movie thing. That's very fascinating. Sony. Well, I've been tweeting about it a little bit. Number one, we don't know it's North Korea yet.
Right.
But it probably is. It's an act of terrorism. It's $100 million, $200 million, $300 million damage. They're going to fire the woman who's the head of the studio. She's going to lose her job over it. All these relationships are going to be destroyed. And all over art, bad art, good art, whatever it is. The fact that this puny dictator who inherited, the worst-run country in the world, who tortures his own people, who has millions of people in literally concentration camp-style, torture chambers in the north of North Korea. There's an incredible story on 60 Minutes about it. The fact that we're kowtowing to him is just really disturbing. And if you look at the calculation of damage, you can't compare it to the lives lost on 9/11, obviously. Mm-hmm. But you can look at it and say, if they blew up the buildings on the Sony lot, I think they'd have to blow up every building to cause the amount of damage they've done. It would have to cause $400 million worth of damage in buildings and resources. So you can't compare that to human lives, but you can actually put a number on the damage this is going to cost to Sony, and it's going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Like massive. If it's truly North Korea, it's an act of war.
It's not over. It's not over. They have more information.
And they can hack more accounts. So number one, everybody's going to have to get two-factor authentication who doesn't have to. Number two, people are going to stop having to write stuff in email that they can't own, right? Mm-hmm. Which anybody who uses computers and was in IT knew because we were all hacking into people's databases early on. And
people have said that. They've said like the thing you used to have to worry about was some guy in IT was maybe sniffing your email.
Well, no, that was it. Were they?
You know what I mean?
They were.
But that was like the limit.
I mean, we were in IT. They were.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, when the email files were written as text documents, and you could just open them up with any little binary hex reader or whatever, it was like, okay, well, obviously this is not secure, nor will it ever be secure,
right.
Let alone keyloggers and all kinds of sophisticated stuff. So it's an act of terrorism. I mean, I think it's going to take, we're going to have to take a national approach to this. And I think Americans are going to have to get together and say, like, do we want this, like, little brat dictator, like, choosing our art or being able to scare us out of movie theaters? I'm kind of pissed off about it. Like, if there was a showing of it tonight, I would literally go buy tickets and go. Mm-hmm. Because I am infuriated that somebody could bully a company like this. And I know it's commerce. It's very easy because it's a company. I think,
it's a business decision, not a national
Yeah, so it's very
decision.
easy for because it's like, oh, Sony, nameless company, oh, these people who were there were kind of loathsome, making kind of semi-racial jokes, like, kind of being jerks or whatever. So it's easy to dismiss it, like, oh, these people deserved it, or, oh, they're rich people, who cares? But it's literally stealing and destroying hundreds of millions of dollars in value. If it was done to citizens, and it was, I don't know, a couple of hundred homes were destroyed by these people, or if they caused $100,000 in damage to 10,000 people in the United States, like, we would have to have a response.
Right.
Like, we might actually have to drop a bomb or, like, assassinate this guy.
Well, I think one thing in there, though, that you just said is they expose a lot of things about executives. People make racist jokes. People are stupid. People say dumb things. But I don't think that's a Sony-specific problem. I think if you went and you did this to any other company in America, you're going to find all the exact same stuff.
And the Schadenfreude, if I'm pronouncing correct, I've never really pronounced it. Schadenfreude of just like, oh my God, everybody's going to just like, pounce on this company. It's really un-American if you think about it. Like, they're under a terrorist attack. And then all the media and everybody's having such a great time
enjoying it, right?
Enjoying that. And it's not a typical
only because it didn't happen to them.
Exactly.
It could be so easily turned.
And so if this wound up being 4 movie studios right now, there would be a much different response. So when the second movie studio gets hit, now it's like, okay, you know what? It's not all of us laughing at them. Right. It's like, okay, we're all under assault. This is going to affect all of our businesses. You know what? We're going to put these movies on. If it's me, I put the movie online for free with a donation box.
So if you were running Sony.
100%.
100%. Okay.
100%. And I would go to the movie theater, and if we put it in
you'd be in the first seat.
I would be in the first seat in the first showing, and I would ask all the Sony executives to come if they want to keep their
handing
jobs.
out popcorn, 3D glasses.
Whatever.
So speaking of you having other jobs, you've built your own companies. You've run your own things. It's been rare since those days, right? Like working at Sony.
Sony was the last full-time job. Yeah.
That was the last one where you worked for somebody else. Yeah. But I know you've been offered jobs over the years.
Sure.
And so I'd like to know, one, I'd like you to talk about some of them, right?
Sure.
Because I know, because you worked in Sony Music, not Sony.
Yeah, I was in Sony Music.
So there were 2 in the music industry I know of that you were offered. One a long time ago and one recently.
Yeah.
Where somebody gave you like the Steve Jobs speech. They said, stop selling soda water.
Sure.
Give up on that thing you're doing, and come over here and come run my thing for me, right?
Yeah.
What is that like when those people come? Tell me about those. Do you know the 2 I'm talking about?
Well, I know one is Pono and Neil Young.
And the other is RollingStone.com.
Yeah, Rolling Stone. Yeah, a long time ago.
So talk about those 2. How does some industry vet come to you, pitch you, and then why don't you do that? Why don't you go run somebody else's thing?
Yeah.
What would it take?
It's usually very subtle. Mm-hmm. It's not like explicitly like, we have a job offer, here's the money, whatever. It's, hey, would you like to hang out with Neil Young and meet Neil Young? I was like, of course I would. He's a legend, right? So I get to hang out with Neil Young for 2 or 3 hours, and I gave him a bunch of advice, and he's a super cool guy. And I just don't want to run a company. I suppose it could happen, and I would put a short list of companies that I would actually like to run. I could actually make the list. So if I was offered this,
give me a couple.
Yeah, if I was offered this, if YouTube, I don't know if I would go work for run YouTube inside at Google.
Right.
But if the YouTube job was open, or the Twitter job was open, or even the AOL or Yahoo job.
Well, I was going to ask about that because activist shareholders.
Yeah.
It's been 2 years for Marissa.
Yeah.
They could kick her out. But
in those things, I would have to very deeply consider it, because you do have the ability to impact a large number of people with products that people love. Now, in 2 of those cases, you have rocket ships.
On the way up.
On the way up.
Yep.
And
YouTube has a long way to go still.
Yeah, huge way to go. I think that's a $1 trillion company. And I think Twitter is going to be a $1 trillion company too. So okay. I think both of those companies will go at least 20x from where they are now, which is a big number. And so both in terms of revenue, users, et cetera. Or maybe not 20x in the case of YouTube, because it'd be impossible to do. But we have to have a lot more people on the planet. But the point is, the other 2 would be sort of turnaround jobs or whatever. But I could do as good a job or better than Marissa or Tim. But one of the problems with my career and the way I've done it is I'm a loudmouth. And I wouldn't get considered for those jobs probably, because people would think I'm a little bit likely to shoot off the hip and say something. I'm not like a company guy.
Edgy, abrasive.
abrasive.
Sure.
You know, I've been abrasive. I've said things that maybe I, shouldn't have said or whatever. It's a small list of things. But, I don't really get considered for those jobs because people would be like, too much of a wild card. But I do get considered for the mid-tier jobs, like the next couple of positions over. So I could be on the management team of most of those companies. I've got offered those kind of things.
Okay.
Like, hey, would you like to come over and talk about this? And that's usually what it is like, hey, do you want to talk about something? And those are pretty easy to dismiss because I'm not the kind of guy who you would want to have working for you.
In a role player.
I'm not really a role player. It would be like, it would take a Phil Jackson level person to figure out
having a lot of influence.
You'd have to have somebody who I would I guess I would have to really trust to say, hey, Dennis Rodman, do you want to play with Michael Jordan? So if Zuckerberg in this analogy is Michael Jordan or, I don't know who else.
Sheryl Sandberg is the Phil Jackson.
Maybe she's
I don't know.
Scottie Pippen. I don't know. Yeah. But
no, but I mean the person putting it together.
Whoever puts it together would have to be like, hey, Jason, you two can coexist in this thing. And, it would be probably more about convincing the other person, the Michael Jordan in the situation, which I am not. Do you want to have this Dennis Rodman on your team who, he might start a fight, You
are the Dennis Rodman.
I don't think so, but I hope I'm a little more consistent than that. But I mean, he did put up pretty good numbers, so it's a hell of a career.
Amazing career.
Top 50 player.
He is. So next most important question: you're at a dinner party. Somebody has a startup.
Sure.
You're at poker. Who are the coolest people you play poker with? Just name 2 or 3 people. There's
2 or 3 categories. Okay, so there's celebrities who have played poker.
Just name a couple of those, and then I want you to do the commercial.
Yeah. Oh, I've played poker with. I'm trying to think if I'm supposed to say this, but they're very public about they play poker. So I've been at
some of the famous celebrity poker players you've been playing.
Yes. So at charity tournaments and other games, I've played with Ben Affleck, Tobey Maguire, Laura Prepon from Orange is the New Black.
Cool.
I played with a bunch of times. Just people like that who are Jennifer Tilly, the actress.
Oh, cool, right.
We're friends.
She was on.
We're friendly, actually. We
Phil Gordon show.
And James Brooks, who's a good friend of mine. Kevin Pollak, who's a good friend of mine. Jimmy Woods, a lot of Kevin Pollak's,
So good,
friends.
I got that one out of you.
Yeah.
So they ask you about business cards for their startup. What do you tell them?
Oh, well, that's an easy one. I say, hey, Moo, use what Jason
uses. Moo.com.
Moo.com, of course.
Twist.
Moo.com/twist and get the discount there, which is unnecessary for a celebrity because it's so cheap already.
They get everything
and
for free anyway.
Well, it's just also affordable.
Right.
But, even a celebrity, we should have a little business card about their latest project. So if you're Adrian Grenier, who's working on a really cool documentary about this whale number 4054 or something. It's a really cool documentary film he was telling me about. He should have a little card where when he meets somebody and wants to talk about that documentary he's producing, he hands them the little card that just says Well 54 or whatever. And here's the URL, Adrian Grenier and Adrian at Well 54 or whatever who does his email for that. Just so he has it for that specific project. And the power of Moo cards is, and by the way, this is an ad. I don't know if anybody knows that, but the power of the Moo cards is they're so tiny. They have those little tiny ones, the little chiclet ones. They're super cute, and they come in a little canister in the case. You'd always see people in the early days of Southwest.
They stand out.
South by Southwest, or all the designers and hipsters had them. The really elite people who care about their image, care about their brand, had Moo cards. But anyway, you could have 3 or 4 of those in your bag, and that's what I do. I just carry a couple of Moo cards. Here's a Moo card for This Week in Startups. Here's one for the Launch Festival. You can make them and pop them up for going to CES. So let's say you had CES. You should make a Moo card for CES that says Engadget.com/CES, not Engadget.com, and the CES party details on it, because it only costs $20 to do this, and you can use Moo.com/twist for more details to get 20% off. Premium paper stock, striking design templates, and everything, and you can make your cards on the website.
Hey, I thought of a segue for this.
Yeah.
So you have your Moo cards, right, for all your different stuff. So 5 years ago, you looked really scattered. As somebody who knows you but is on the outside, I don't work with you on a daily basis. Yeah. I talk to you every now and then. It looked like you were doing 7 different things that had nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I'm not sure how aware you were of that, but now it looks like you're doing at most maybe 2 things.
2 things.
And they're super cohesive. And so the ones that I could see back then were you had Mahalo, which was human-powered search that turned into
videos.
Q&A and digital currency and videos, how-tos, and then apps, right? So that went through that was off over here going in a lot of directions, right?
Yeah, a lot of lessons.
Then you had your big giant conference, but then you also had this kind of the Open Angel Forum, another brand, a separate thing. You had
too many brands.
Not just this show, but a network of 50 shows on comedy and
This Week and everything.
This week and everything, right? So this weekend.
Yeah.
God, I'm probably missing some things. You had a newsletter that kind of maybe didn't tie into that stuff.
The Jason Nation, which is me writing,
right?
Stop
Which
emailing.
is your own thing. And then another full-time job. You could have just been doing like World Series of Poker and Poker Stars or whatever the thing was.
I was a full tilt Red Pro, which means very little. It just means you're a celebrity who can draw attention.
Right,
but
you
I was considering going and doing that professionally. I would say if you looked at like the greatest players, like Phil Hellmuth, Doc Sands, people I play cards with now, those guys are the best in the world. And I play in a game with them. And
you do part-time. It's like being part-time
I could hold my own in a game with them. I would never be net positive against them. But they would both tell you in a game with them, they would be, they wouldn't think I was a weak player.
Yeah, they would be respectful.
They would think I was a good player, and they wouldn't be able to run over me. Which is like saying in the poker world or in the basketball world, hey, Jason's not in the NBA, but I wouldn't be able to, stand 4 feet back from him if we were playing a pickup game because he could hit a couple shots. Right?
You could probably make the Knicks, but not like...
Yeah, exactly. No, I could play in, college, basically, is what the equivalent would be. So I could be a college basketball player, a college poker player, and to be in that elite level... I don't know that I know I have the innate skill to do it. It would take a level of focus for 5 years and discipline, which I do have. But I also just looked at it and said, I enjoy poker so much. I enjoy strategy so much that maybe I should just do that for fun.
Right.
And do what I'm truly good at, where I can be the Michael Jordan of angel investing. I can be the Michael Jordan of hosting this program. I could be Michael Jordan of a festival. I could be Michael Jordan of, making a news app, and doing media stuff. I don't think I could be Michael Jordan of poker without a lot more commitment.
So was that one moment where you woke up and said, "Oh my God, I'm going in 7 directions. I'm going to go out of my mind"? Did
I would say,
have a talk with you and say,
well, people were talking to me the whole time. Roloff both and other people were like, "You think you might want to tighten up and focus a little bit?" And I think when Mahalo got hit really hard by that Google update, which people have seen me, tweet about and how unfair it was. That was like getting hit in the side. Like when you ever get in a car accident that you didn't see? It was about to happen.
But I've seen it on TV.
So I got in a car accident coming back from a club in Manhattan when I was young, and it had a kind of a profound impact on me because it was a series of car accidents. And we were just driving through the meatpacking district coming back from a club called the Roxy. And I was in some person's little tiny car. And we just went through an intersection in the meatpacking district, got slammed in the side. And I was in the back seat. And the car spun out and then just crashed into the car was totaled. And that was like, I wouldn't say life-changing, but it was very much I woke up and said, oh shit, like you can die pretty quick in this life, right? And I would say that's the analogy that happened on a startup level, not life and death, but life and death of a startup, which is, hey, we're the 140th largest site. We have a $10 million run rate. I have 90 employees. I'm burning $500,000 a month, but I'm making actually in the best month, $450,000. And I'm giving all 90 people a $500 bonus for Christmas, like just a little and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, why not spend, $50,000 on bonuses? And then literally 2 months later, you lose 80% of your traffic. And I go and I email Larry, Sergey, Marissa, everybody over there, and none of them respond to my emails. I'm like, well, this is kind of fucked up. Like, I've been a partner of yours for 10 years, and you just took 80% of my traffic away, and I'm laying people off. I got people crying in the office. I got people yelling and screaming at me, and I'm trying to cut a burn down from, spending, all of a sudden I went from hitting break even in that December to 2 months later being negative $300 a month. We had a lot of money in the bank, but it was like, oh, this is really fucked. I am going to go out of business if I don't take dramatic action. And it was totally unfair. And that's why, this like just really opened my eyes up. And, after me, the way I responded to them was I sent them an email every week with 10 of our pages, the quality level of the pages, and the quality level of the pages in front of us. And I have all the emails. And I sent them to
I remember this.
The 7 or 8 top people at Google. And I said, what the fuck is going on? These pages ahead of ours or whatever, my company is going down in flames. And I sent it every week for 20 weeks.
And how many replies did you get?
Yeah, some people replied and said, I'm sorry, whatever. And so I wouldn't shut up about it. And I said, listen, I'm going to start going public with this. And I did. And then that's when all of a sudden people started saying like, hey, why don't you come over? So I come over and I meet with Matt Cutts. And he sits there with this like stupid grin on his face and says, you don't have a penalty against you. And I'm like, Matt, we've made $25 million together over 2 companies, Weblogs Inc. and this one. You used Weblogs Inc.
as a case study.
As a case study when you went public in your IPO. This is how you treat me. And that's when I realized, like, these big companies are not loyal. And a person like Matt Cutts, who probably made $100, $200 million in Google shares, he doesn't actually care about me as a person. And that's when I realized, like, wow, there's like really 2 groups of people. Like, there's your friends, and then there's the people who are friendly with you, right? And when you start figuring that out, it kind of put a little fire in my belly, and I was like, all right, you know what? I got to get back in fighting shape. I can't be effing around on 7 different projects. And that was sort of the impetus, was like, okay, let's just start tightening this up because I got to come back strong. I got to put this in people's faces. So I put a little bit of fire in my belly. And you have to remember, that was the same time that I broke up with Mike over the TechCrunch 50 stuff and started the Launch Festival. And he did Disrupt, I did Launch Festival after 3 years of being in. So I was in a lawsuit with Mike and in a major public fight with Mike. And Mike was having his own PR crisis with all the allegations. All the Mike stuff, which I don't want to get into anyway because it's sort of negative and toxic. But it's a pretty shitty year. But it was like, you know what? I got blood in my mouth, and I kind of like the taste of it. Because as you know, I grew up in a brawling kind of environment in Brooklyn, and like, I actually do not get phased too much by getting in a brawl like that. It kind of actually builds my energy a little bit in a sadistic, weird way to get in a fight. And I think in my younger days, you were there with me, I would start fights constantly with people over things, right? I was constantly a fighter.
Usually fighting up, which is a good strategy.
Well, it was a strategy when you're down. But when you get to the top, you have to flip the strategy and flip the script. So now you don't see me fighting down. But I fought up. I was like, Nick Denton is the largest publisher, and we're just getting started with Weblogs Inc. That's a good fight to have. Let's get in a fight with him, right? So I would always pick a target. Like that's what we got to change. That's how the world has to change. I pick a target. But yeah, that was a tough year for me. But my daughter was born, and you start to get perspective. And it's not like woe is me. We made some money off the Weblogs Inc. thing. I'm not going to like suffer. But it was very painful. It was very painful to have all that success taken from you by people you thought were your friends. And that to me was what hurt most. Not the losing, but losing because Matt Cutts, who was friendly with me, who we'd speak on the same panels, who I would do favors for, who we would trade emails, you know what I'm saying? And I did that case study for you guys, and we knew Kim Malone over there, and we knew Larry and Sergey did like Sergey did a talk at Silicon Alley 2000 when they were like a 15, 20 person company. And I really went to bat. I mean, you were there. I wrote those blog posts about like why AdSense is great for publishers. And I wrote this thing, and I really helped get them the first 50 publishers on AdSense. And then they pulled the rug out from under me and like, beat me up. And then I see Matt Cutts like at the Y Combinator demo day, and he wants to talk to me. He comes up to talk to me just this summer. And he's like, hey, how you doing? I was like, what the fuck? I literally said to him, I was like, you got some, gall to come up to me and talk to me. Like, you like really destroyed my life for years. And he's like, well, we can talk about that. I was like, I don't really want to talk to you about it and have your smug, like, smile again. Well, I have to lay people off. And I just laid into him. Like, I you've seen me lay into people. I laid into Matt Cutts this summer. And I just said to Matt, I said, Matt, you've never created anything in your life, have you? Have you ever built something? He said, no. Has he ever started a company? He said, no. I said, you ever have to fire 100 people? He said, no. I said, all right, well, you know what? That's the difference between me and you. I make stuff. And all you did was take down what I did. And during all that, when I'm laying people off, and I made all that money with you guys for 10 years, you know what you did? Nothing. I'll never forget it. And that's who you are. You're the person who cost 100 people their jobs and who didn't communicate to your partner. You're the person who screwed your partner. And by the way, that's why everybody in the Valley is so concerned and hates Googlers. That's why people are protesting your buses. That's why people don't like you guys anymore. Everybody was rooting for Google for a decade, and then you guys became so powerful, and then you guys started taking everybody's search results and putting your own stuff up there, and you guys don't think about partners anymore. And if you guys are all so concerned about moonshots and getting 10 times and 100 times your efficacy, you know what? You're the most successful people in the world. You're the richest people in the world. But what is it all worth if everybody hates you and all your partners hate you? Like everybody who's a Google partner hates them. and they've all stopped being partners with them.
You've definitely been love-hate with Google and YouTube. I mean, because YouTube, you went through that again with
YouTube was
Mahalo.
like, it was like the same kind of thing. It was like...
You were a partner.
I was a partner.
You expected
They
certain
said to
things.
me, we're going to do like another...
And you went public on them too with...
Well, because they said to me, we're going to do like
deal.
They said, we're going to renew your deal for $3 million. Then they came back and said, we're going to renew your deal for $400,000. And we want to recoup everything from the last one and take 100% of your revenue. And I was like, wait a second. You just agreed to do $3 million in content with us for the next thing. And now you're cutting that deal after I said no to other partners who wanted to do the shows with us that we were doing on YouTube and all this kind of stuff. But even worse than that, they wanted to take the new deal where we were splitting revenue, and they said, oh, you remember the last deal where we put like $1 million or $2 million into content? We want to take all the other channels you have that have nothing to do with those deals. We want to recoup that revenue, the $1 million you're making over here, against the deal we did over here. And I was like, I need that to pay my people.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, we just want to recoup faster. I was like, why? You have $10 billion in the bank and you're putting $10 billion more in the bank. And they're like, yeah, that's just what we're doing. And I was just like, you know what? I just put my hands up. I was like, these people have no idea how to partner with people. The level of like, they would look at you, like I would be at these YouTube partner meetings and there'd be 20 YouTube partners there, the biggest ones in the world. And all of us would be sitting there, and everybody would be wailing on YouTube and how unfair it was, and of all the strategies of how they could get off of YouTube and kill YouTube, and partnerships with Yahoo, partnerships with AOL,
Facebook,
the guy from Jason, the guy Jason from Hulu was starting something. The entire conversation would be all the partners talking about how much they hate Google, and a Googler would come up, a YouTuber would come up, and boom, everybody would be like, oh my God, yeah, oh, we'd love that new feature where you redid the homepage and you redirected all our traffic to the new show you're doing, the YouTube clip show that's based on our show. Oh, that's great. They walk away, everybody start bitching about them again.
Well, I think you're nice to your partners on the way up, and then when you're the number one,
exactly.
You're a monopoly, you squeeze. I mean, that's what you do.
But you don't have to.
No, you don't have to.
See,
but
this is the thing.
Apple does that too, right?
No, Apple's magnanimous. I think it's the opposite. If you look at Apple does not say, what are the top 50 apps in the App Store? Let's recreate them, put ours on top of those, and move them down the list.
I agree a little bit, but traditionally they've taken shareware and incorporated it into the OS.
Very slowly.
They've taken things and they've
very slowly and very
simply. If you're an Apple developer, you would say they're just like what Google's doing.
I've studied that. Like if you look at how slowly they do that. It's a very slow process. So they'll say, hey, we're going to do this HealthKit thing, right? But you can still have your app. The HealthKit thing is going to be very basic. It's going to come out in 2 years. So keep working on other features and other things that Runkeeper can do, and Runkeeper will dump its information into HealthKit
and all that stuff. Yep.
And we're still going to feature you guys on the top page. We're still going to feature you up there. And then you look at like the lameness of Google, where they're like, "Oh, Yelp was a great partner. We're going to push Yelp down the page." And we're going to put local on the top of the page. And with the Zagat stuff, even though it's a worse consumer experience, it's a definitively worse consumer experience. They have no reviews, those companies. They move them down the page. And then Matt Cutts goes out and lies and say, we didn't change organic search. No, you didn't change search. But you moved the first organic search
It's off
down the page by 400 pixels. And that's when I just started tweeting like, Matt Cutts is a liar. And I just did a keynote at this event, PubCon, where I just said, listen, here's all examples of Matt Cutts lying to you guys. He lied to you. He lied to me. And here's where I figured it out. And then this is where I moved on. And then, I had a lot of people telling me, like, Jason, you're kind of an elder statesman now. You got money. You got fame. You got power. Like, why are you mixing it up still? Why are you starting this fight? It's like it's a zero-sum game or whatever. And he said, you know what? I'm honest. I'm candid. I'm always going to be candid. That's who I am. I'm going to be candid. And I'm going to say it in an intelligent way, but I'm going to say it in a candid way. And I know that he lied to me. And I know that Google hasn't treated partners well. So I'm going to be honest about it. And if they want to have an honest discussion, whatever, if they never want, they won't sponsor a launch festival now. Like they stopped sponsoring the festival. So like they're sticking it to me.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? It's kind of lame. Because you're not really sticking it to me, Google, by not sponsoring launch festival. And they kind of dropped it at the same time. And they're like, oh, no, it has nothing to do with each other. It's like, okay, it has nothing to do with each other. You know what? I'm still going to invite Don Dodge to the event, even though he works for Google. I'm still going to use Google services. But you're really only shooting yourself in the foot because you're missing all those 10,000 entrepreneurs that are there, right? And so, I don't know. I mean, maybe I shouldn't start these fights. I have one filter. I like to be, and I think that's why people like the show. It's because no matter what happens in the show, I'm going to be candid, right? I'm not going to pull punches. I may say things in a little bit of a more sophisticated way in episode 500 than episode 1.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to pull punches.
Okay, so let's do a PagerDuty commercial.
Oh my God, PagerDuty is great.
We can get to some live.
That could have saved our relationship. But I mean, you know what page? I mean, let me ask you this: when you have a development team, how contentious can the being on duty thing get?
When you have 5 people, everybody's on call, right? Or
right.
It's not like you're only on call every 2 months. You're on call like every other day.
Right.
Yeah, it's
brutal.
Yeah, startups.
And it's hard because developers are really sought after. They'll quit over this issue or not take a job over this issue. Mm-hmm. If you're not resourced properly around people being on duty a reasonable amount of time and not having them fired off and getting like all kinds of alerts that are BS and getting woken up in the middle of the night. So that's what PagerDuty does. If you're on call, it's brutal. You get constant alerts and they aggregate all your stuff. Like if you have a zillion different monitoring tools, you know all these tools, Brian. Mm-hmm. But like I guess New Relic and what are the modern ones? I mean, we used to have...
I've seen people discuss these systems and should they rebuild them or should they use something else? And I haven't seen, nobody's offered a good alternative.
Right.
They do a really good job.
But I'm saying there's the other ones of like, what are the alert systems that you would get like on your phone just firing off constantly, like this Apache server's down, this,
Yeah, the Nagio's plugged into this.
Nagio's plugged into this.
Things go in a Slack chat room now. There's
everything is just everywhere all over the place. And what PagerDuty does is puts that all into one place and you can get all those alerts on iOS and Android apps and you can say which ones go to which people and which ones actually cause people to get woken up, all that kind of stuff. And they have tons of clients like Atlassian, HipChat, Pinterest, New Relic, Airbnb, Panasonic, Slack, Path. Everybody uses PagerDuty. And I'm an investor in Chartbeat. In fact, I was the first angel investor. And PagerDuty gives Chartbeat one central place to send critical alerts. We now have simple, easy process for on-call scheduling, and they are a mission-critical app for so many companies. Like all these big media companies, like have their Chartbeats on big, huge televisions around their office. If it goes down, it's like these people are paying lots of money. I know because I see the revenue numbers that Chartbeat has revenue like, and like if you got clients paying you money that's going like this, your service got to be up, and PagerDuty is what helps them manage it. Like. It helps a lot of people manage it. So, hey, you can get a 14-day free trial, pagerduty.com/twist, and you'll get a free T-shirt when you get your first alert. It's really affordable, too. So if you roll your own, you're probably going to cost you, like, what, 2 or 3 developer months?
Yeah, but that's your first impulse. But you would tell any startup CEO, like you, streamlining your empire down to, like, 2 things.
Yeah.
You got to focus. Do your thing.
Yeah, I'm really laser focusing everything down, and it's a good skill to get. So, I mean, moving up here was a part of the laser focusing. Mm-hmm. Taking over as CEO for launch was like a part of that. Like, okay, let me get in here and just figure out how aligned can launch be with my angel investing this week in startups, the festival, and how sustainable and almost easy to run. I want it to run like clockwork. So if I'm not here, I have a team of 10 super intelligent people who just make awesome decisions for the companies that we interact with consistently. And I would say I'm about halfway there. I have all the intelligent people. I need 1 or 2 more. And we have half the processes worked out. But it's really becoming quite sustainable for a company with $3 million in revenue and 10 people and the world's largest conference and the world's largest tech or startup podcast. It's a kind of a big operation from the outside. It looks huge, but it's really only 9 people plus me. So it's efficient, and I'm really going for efficiency there and just breaking even and not making any money off of it.
So this is good. This brings me up to something I wanted to ask you too, which is they asked Jeff Bezos recently, do you have like a succession plan at Amazon? Like if you're gone, who takes over? So given that your daughter won't be old enough to run this for another maybe 15 years, you get hit by, you step outside tomorrow, you're hit by like a Lyft car, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And you're gone.
Yeah.
Who could take this over? Who could because it's a very personality driven thing.
Yeah, no, I think it goes away. Right now it goes away.
Okay. There's no you wouldn't call like Tyler or back in because I could see different people like running the show or maybe the conference or maybe not the newsletter.
I do think it goes away at this point. I haven't really thought about succession plans and I've told the team here like, hey, I'm going to we gave the team stock options in June. We're doing all that, and I was like, listen, it's going to be sort of like you're going to have a great time working here, but the equity in the company may be nice to have, and I'm giving it to you, but it's sort of like having equity in Gawker where Nick is never going to sell and he owns the majority. Right. So you're basically, even if you get equity in this company, I have ROFR on it. I get to pick who buys the shares. I'm probably just going to buy them back from you, and it won't be at some like amazing level. So it's just sort of like a token thing. Mm-hmm. But more interestingly, I'm getting the team here involved in my angel investing. So I'm trying to reinvent angel investing.
That's good.
And that's more interesting.
The equity makes sense there.
Yeah, I think the equity makes less sense in a media company because media companies don't grow. But having I'm creating a bonus pool based upon the returns of my angel investing for the team at launch. So that gets interesting. So
That's very interesting.
You're a writer for me, but you get some of the venture returns when you see me doing all those fancy angel investments. You're like, oh, I write the lunch ticker. Oh, I'm a sales executive. Oh, I can get into that. Like if Jason hits another Uber or Thumbtack or Chartbeat or Tout, I can get a piece of that action.
Right.
That's super powerful.
Well, that's real because, I mean, you have Inside, which was Mahalo.
Yeah.
And very quickly, one of the people, who was it, Vishal, and I try to name check some of the fans that ask questions because I folded them all in.
It really is amazing. The fans actually, I will say, like, I love doing the show. What I love now more than the show is the fans.
They're good. They're all over the place. They had tons of questions.
I have. It's like literally like outside of my personal, family life, the greatest moments for me are when I'm with my team and we're laughing, in our little room of one. I like having a team that's big enough to fit in one room and everybody can talk at once. So when we're laughing and joking and having a good time, like that's a really high point of my day with the team at, Inside or lunch. But it's really amazing when somebody stops me or writes me an email and says, hey, Jason, I've been watching the show for 3 or 4 years. I grew up on the show. And now I'm doing this new company called Product Hunt, and it's wrong.
That's my favorite.
And I'm like,
that comes.
I just ran into Ryan on the street. Every time I see him, I want to give him a hug. I'm like, this is like the greatest thing ever. Like he tells me I grew up on the show.
Right.
It's like
when
really,
somebody comes up to Bob Dylan, he's like, I'm a big fan. My whole career is my name's Bruce Springsteen.
Well, and the other thing
is, to thank you.
And we're 5 years into this. Like what happens 10, 15 years in? Then it could get really interesting.
So everybody wanted to know what your favorite show was, but when people come up to you on the street, because it's tough. I mean, it's funny because I've watched a lot of your shows, and I think in maybe 20 or 30 of them, you've ended by saying it's like a top 3 show. Well,
I said that to everybody, make them feel good.
But no, they're good shows. They are.
I mean, the fans will very clearly reference some very specific seminal shows. One will be DHH, David Hanmeyer Hansen, because we got in a good debate about venture best business versus revenue, and obviously they've
very anti.
He's very anti. He's very like, and I think and I'm not saying this to give myself credit, but I think DHH and I are very similar people in that we're opinionated and have some degree of success based on our opinions. Right?
He has a very opinionated software product, and like if you agree with him, it makes perfect sense to you. If you don't, it doesn't.
Exactly.
And they will not put a feature into 30-second signal stuff based.
So I loved that. I love that moment. I love the moment of debate in the show when those kind of things flare up. The Chris Sacca one is just so legendary because nobody really knew Chris before that, and I don't know what was in Chris's coffee before it, but he just went for it. And we're 2 hours in. And I'm like, we're not stopping this. I don't care if the TriCaster goes on fire. Like, if it melts, I don't care. Like, this is one for the ages. And that's one for the ages. Last night I was at Shervin's Christmas party, and like 3 people who work at Uber came up to me. And one of them said, you changed my life. It's another, like, one of these moments. And literally, I have a you changed my life moment, like, weekly.
Nice.
Which is pretty amazing. And he sort of gets into the legacy. And I said, how so? And he said, I watched the episode when Travis was on. And he was in 2 cities. And you said to Travis, I think this, could be $1 billion company. And Travis was like, I don't, do you think really? And we had this like great little dialogue. Like, could Uber ever be worth $1 billion? And he says, well, you know what? Nobody knows, but we're going to Chicago. And the kid said, you know what my first job at Uber was? I said, what? He goes, I ran Chicago.
Nice.
I said, you're kidding. How did you wind up getting the job? He goes, I emailed Travis that I watched the show that he was on, and he gave me the job to run Chicago. So he got his job from watching the show, da-da-da-da-da-da. And that show happened because Travis happened to be in L.A., and he just texted me and said, hey, I'm in, can I be on the show? Like, he asked me, can I be on the show? I was like, yeah, come on the show, like, of course, And so for me, like, that show was special. We've been friends with Travelers for 15 years, and so it was very special. Having you on, very special, like you and I.
I was on a starter, the starter shows when you were getting your feet.
Well, I just couldn't think of anybody, honestly, like, I always look back on our friendship, and I always think, like, you're such a key part of my success, like, in terms of, I don't think all those early things, a lot of them were based on your talent more than mine, or at least equal.
Thank you.
Well, no, like, if you look at Cyber Surf and the magazine we did together, or even Silicon Valley Report, or a lot of these things, there were people who are more talented than me who worked for me who made those things what they were.
So, well, to be fair, though, there was a very Jobs and Wozniak kind of thing where a lot of people will be in the Wozniak camp and they say he was a genius. Without him, there's no computer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who say, well, without Jobs, we wouldn't have them on every desk, right? So there's definitely that balance.
Yeah, I mean, I have a certain skill set. I mean, I'm able to get attention for stuff. I'm able to get people to do things and work harder than maybe they've ever had in their career.
So that's a knock. That's a skill, but then also it's a limiting factor in terms of a lot of people say you can run a company in like first gear for like way past when you should be running it in first gear, and you burn through a lot of people and that kind of thing.
I do.
So the question for you though is you've had like 6, 7, 8-figure exits. Could you ever actually build something yourself, like an inside or whatever thing you're building? And I know you can't sell like the launch empire or whatever because it's very personality driven. But could you actually have a 9-figure? Do you have $1 billion, $100 million or $1 billion company in you?
Yeah.
Or do you need one now that you've invested in 100 other companies to each be multi-billion dollar?
Here's the thing I decided. I decided I like running companies up to 30 people, 40 people, 50 people. Once it's after that, this whole concept that you're going to only have A players, you're only going to have Brian Alvey.
No middle managers.
You're only going to have Tyler. You're only going to have Mark Jeffrey. You're only going to have CK Sample. You're only going to have, go down the list of people who've been just extraordinary contributors. Carol Martesco, Peter Rojas, Ryan Block. Mm-hmm. You just go down the list of, just people who were the people who do 5 people's jobs effortlessly. And they do it at such a high level without complaining. Like the idea that the A-plus players are going to keep showing up for positions 31, 32, and 33, 41, 41, 42, 51, 50, 100. Right. It's just bullshit. Like so. Everybody's like, oh yeah, we only allow A players here. Like, listen, if you walk around the Google or Facebook campus, like they're not all A players.
This is why you won't run Yahoo. I know you won't.
Well, I mean, I would walk into Yahoo and I'd be like, wow, it's really great to come to work with a bunch of B players. It's like, no, not everybody is designed for that first 2 years, right? It takes a certain amount of selflessness, drive, insanity, resiliency, really resiliency in those first 24, 30 months. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm built for. I have the ability to start stuff before I know I've even started it, right? So like when Open Angel Forum happened, like I created this organization because I got pissed off that somebody was charging people. And I literally created it in an hour with Tyler Crowley, who was another great contributor. And I said, let's just start this. And we'll do it in, LA. He's like, when? I was like, let's do it 30 days from today. Great, we launch it. And then I was like, you know what?
I was there. You
were there. And I was like, we need to do it in Boston and we need to do it in New York. Mm-hmm. And I asked you to do it in New York, somebody else to do it in Boston. Boom, all of a sudden it starts. And I'm like, well, what did I just start? And it's like, it's still going on in Boulder, right? And people still ask me if they can open chapters. I'm like, I'm not really doing it anymore because AngelList kind of does it. Because back then, when I started Open Angel Forum, even here in the Valley, nobody knew who the angels were. Mm-hmm. There were no profiles of angels that existed on the web. They were stealth. Mm-hmm. And so the second one here, Chris Saka and Kevin Rose ran the chapter here for me. Wow. But they never showed up. They're too busy. They showed up sometimes. The second one, Uber was at. And first round met Uber famously at that Open Angel Forum, and I invested famously in Uber at that Open Angel Forum. So like I have that ability to start stuff without really thinking about it, which is why sometimes people say I'm scattered sometimes. But I think that's what you need to have to be that early stage entrepreneur.
Well, so that brings me to the question I started
and turn it off too, like when it's not working. I just basically was like, the world doesn't need Open Angel Forum.
That's a skill. I mean, it was good. It was a mercy killing. You had to do that.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense, and it kind of competed with other stuff and did make you look scattered. And actually, I think it hit a wall where
it hit a wall because people were getting funded before they could ever.
Well, you couldn't find 6 companies that the 30 angels in that city hadn't already seen. But 2 years before that, it was really hard to find them. But now they're all in these summer camps, and they're all getting looked at, and demo days and whatever. And you just couldn't put one together anymore.
There are tons of incubators finding them, right? So there was a better solution. Incubators and the accelerators, incubators, and AngelList were much better solutions to the problem of connecting angels.
Amazing.
Connecting angels and founders was much better done by Naval, David Cohen, and Paul Graham.
Right. So that brings me back to one of my original questions, which is
we're about 10 minutes in, right?
Yeah, something like that. We have 2 more hours to go, and I've only gone like through 3 out of 30 questions.
I'll answer shorter.
Okay, good. No, don't do that. So one of the things that's kind of funny is almost everything you've ever built, all the major stuff you've built, has been a reaction to something else. You're the guy who, if there's a hot dog stand that's doing really well across the street, you will open a hot dog stand across the street, but you have like brown mustard and it's yours. And so it's like you plus somebody else's idea plus a tiny twist. You have this like conceit that like I'm going to do it better. And if I go through everything you've ever built, you can say this was an attack on that, or this was a response to that, right? So Mahalo was like Wikipedia with ads. Right?
It was like Wikipedia plus search, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
So
there's got to be Google search at the time was just 10 blue links.
Correct.
And I thought, hey, if you put content on that page,
invented a beautiful page, and
I did. And then if you take that page and you put Google's new pages and you hold it up to the light, it looks like somebody cheated on a quiz. It's
absolutely.
So not only did they kill my company with Panda, they basically took all the innovations, but they would have gotten to those innovations anyway.
Okay, so that's Mahalo, or at least the original idea from Mahalo.
The Mahalo was really two ideas. One was I think I was very unique in this, which is I want to put content on a search page, and I want humans to pick it. That is unique. Now,
well, so you're finding a unique thing inside something. Well,
I think that's like very unique.
The Netscape site that was like.
Well, hold on. Let me just, in my own defense for that one.
Sure, go ahead. We'll go through each one of them.
Putting content on a search page was kind of blew people's minds to the point at which Sequoia invested in it. The people who did that. So it was that was a wholly unique concept. I believed that I came up with. I thought the technique of using the Wikipedia's Media Wiki, which is what we built the first platform on, was the best underlying technology
and the sort of crowdsourcing of
and to crowdsource it, right? So I had a mix of paid and I always believed in a little bit of paid and a little bit of public, right? Paid and public. So you have people who are paid who are cleaning it up and creating a good base, and then the public adding. Paid and public, which, by the way, is where a lot of people are winding up now. Like Dig in this version, which I don't know if it's successful or not, is paid plus public. That site where they play the video games, Twitch, that they paid the first 100 people, and then everybody else came. So that paid plus public.
Reddit, they put up their own stories.
YouTube is paid plus public. Wikipedia now has people they give grants to do certain sections. So that is the better model. You know, this whole debate over crowdsourcing is more powerful than money. It's actually a hybrid is the most powerful. But putting that aside, people thought it was Wikipedia for search. People thought it was Google 2.0. But I think actually that was one of the more unique things I did.
Damn, that was my first one of the ones that weren't unique.
Okay, but you know, like you can debate these things, right? Because if you say, who did Mahalo copy? Actually, the best person you could say I copied was Naver. But the interesting thing that happened with Naver was when I started showing the Mahalo mockups to people, I had somebody who was Korean said, just like Naver. And I said, what's Naver? And then I went and visited Naver. And Naver was doing 10 links, 10 MP3s, 10 photos, 10 videos, 10
books,
10 books, you know, right down the line. And it was like, oh, this is organized category search. So you took vertical search and you put it all on one long page. So they actually had gotten there first. But the Netscape thing, you know, I tried to buy Dig at AOL. Kevin didn't want to sell it. Kevin probably would have made much more money actually if he sold it, because it probably would have been a $60 or $70 million deal. It would have been double the Weblogs Inc. deal.
Then they wouldn't make fun of the business we cover.
And they wouldn't make fun of the business because they actually would have made $20 million. But anyway, putting that aside, he didn't want to sell. And I had actually tried to buy Dig in the early days of Weblogs Inc. You remember? I tried to get Mark Cuban to give us $1 million to buy it from him and make it part of Weblogs Inc. because it was driving traffic to Engadget. And my concept with Netscape, which people don't even remember now, they put me in charge of Netscape 2.0 when we sold Weblogs Inc. to AOL because AOL owned Netscape, was if you just took the top 10 people from Reddit and the top 10 contributors to Dig, and you just paid them $1,000 a month, it would only be $20,000. It would only be $250,000 a year. That's the equivalent of hiring like 4 or 5 writers at a newspaper.
Or 2 AOL execs.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's 2 AOL execs do about the work of one, so it's really like calling 1 AOL exec. So then you would actually have something unique. And you built it with a team in 2 months or something, and it came out really well. And it actually, Netscape's traffic was going like this as people were uninstalling the Netscape browser. And when we launched it, all of a sudden it went sideways. And sideways means growth because people were still uninstalling it.
That's a Tim Armstrong quote. Flat is the new up.
Well, flat is up when you have a descending asset. And so I had somebody on the show actually describe that to me just recently, which is, they called it the Dust Bowl. It was the guy from Glue Mobile who's like, hey, you know, if you're Zynga and Facebook games are going like this, and you launch mobile games, until mobile games crosses over with the decline of the Facebook games, it's just a mess, and nobody feels very good about it. But then once it crosses over, you start to like have clarity, like, oh yeah, that's going to go to the ground, that plane's going to land or crash.
You're okay with that?
And that's okay. And then this one is growing, and that's what's happening at AOL right now. They bought enough content assets, Huffington Post, TechCrunch, Weblogs Inc. and Gadget Autoblog, blah, 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 blah. Those things are now starting to surpass the dial-up revenue. Or maybe they haven't, but it's sort of like a wash. And so everybody sort of does that. So it was a success, but I only got to run it for 3 or 4 months. And then I was like, I hit my 1 year, and I was like, I'm out of here.
Right. And they squeezed out John Miller, and then you were gone. Yes.
Yeah. Well, John was like, hey, what would make you stay here? And I was like, if I was president and I had a board seat when we spin it out. And he's like, yeah, that's probably not going to happen, but I do appreciate you being blunt. And you know what? At that time, I wasn't ready for that. Mm-hmm. If John and I had done that, that would be more successful than with its current incarnation.
Okay, so down the quick list, because everything was, like I said, it was
what was Silicon Alley Reporter derivative of?
There was some like Alley Cat thing or whatever. There was a newsletter.
Alley Cat was doing it. Yeah, there was a release 1.0 like newsletter.
It's funny,
about
you're a little defensive, like wait, that wasn't.
No, I'm just trying to remember. Like there was at New York was another one. Right? There were. I mean, to start a newsletter is not unique, and to start a newsletter about a particular city is not unique either, because there's a bunch of those.
Open Angel Forum was it Karetsu or something?
And there were all these angel groups.
The launch conference there was demo, like everything was like.
Yeah, TechCrunch 50 was a reaction to the demo conference. Yeah, TechCrunch 40, because we were like, that's BS that people are charging $20,000 to get on stage. So let's do a new one where you don't have that. So change the revenue model, but have the same style of event. So that was stolen. Yeah.
I wouldn't say stolen. I would say better.
Whatever. I mean, I think if you look at the concept of stealing, here's the thing. If you take somebody's idea and you make it genuinely better with purpose and authenticity, people will not think you've stolen it. They think that you've evolved it.
Yeah, the iPod wasn't the first MP3 player.
The Rio was.
Steve Jobs invented MP3 players.
And the iPhone wasn't the Trio 650.
And we didn't invent blogging. Like I joke, like we perfected it. We perfected it.
We perfected it, commercialization of it. So when you look at that, I think that's where the derivative thing comes from. So if you steal something pixel for pixel, like those Samwar brother,
the European clones.
Those guys are scumbags. Yes. Like, if you're those guys, like, you should be rightfully hated. What I do when I look at derivative businesses or evolving businesses, I try to say, is there some unique purpose or authentic reason why you think you can make it better, right? And so if you consider inside a copy of, Reddit, because it allows now, in the last 10 days, we allow people to submit their own stories. Okay, maybe, like it has, Reddit lets you submit. But Reddit isn't rewriting the headlines and the body. That's our innovation, right? Like we're rewriting them with, serious good writers. And so much so that TechMeme stole that, right? So I don't mind TechMeme stealing it, because TechMeme was an aggregator and a curator. Kind of an inspiration for Insight, isn't it, And if you even go backwards to the Dig was the delicious top page, the bookmarking service page, and Slashdot are what Kevin referred to as his inspirations. So I think if you evolve it and you have purpose and authentic reasoning behind the evolution, and I think that's why I don't get that label anymore. But the hater, any hater can apply that to anything, almost anything. I mean, Google built a search engine, the 50th one.
Right.
Google built Gmail, the 50th web-based one.
All these things nobody needed.
They didn't build AdSense, they bought that. Applied Semantics. They didn't build YouTube, they bought that. They didn't buy Android, they bought that. The self-driving cars, everybody thought they built. It turns out they bought that too. And so if you go down the list, what actually did Google...
It's very Microsoft of them to do all of that.
There actually really isn't a Google innovation. There are Google doing things better.
Okay. So like a 10x, but not a, like an evolutionary
And with a purpose.
leap.
Like Gmail had a purpose, which was unlimited storage.
Right.
And
the searching instead of organizing.
Exactly. So you're just going to search. You don't have to build folders, right? So there was very unique perspective on email there that I think makes us not think of them as like, oh, they're just stealing stuff. But when they did Google+, it kind of felt like they were just stealing it. And when Zuckerberg did Facebook, it did kind of feel like he was just building a better Friendster. But it was so much better that he did one unique thing there, right? The one unique thing that Facebook did was the platform. Like they really did the platform. That's their innovation, was like, hey, you can have apps inside of here and it's like an operating system and a social network. That was truly unique. I mean, sure, you could say it's like Windows, but it's not an operating system. It's on the web inside of a social network. It's really unique.
If you think this conversation is just getting good, you're right. Tune in for part 2 to hear them talk candidly about Uber, race relations, the essential qualities of founders, a game-changing announcement at the upcoming Launch Festival, and why Jason will go supernova in 2015.